12:05. Woo. Hello. So we are going to get started. Feel free to turn your cameras on, leave your cameras off. A lot of what we do today is going to be fairly presentational and a lot of information. So feel free to take notes, do whatever you do best. I know I've known people to knit while consuming information. So whatever you need to do um, uh, to make this the most productive for you, please feel free to do so. My name is Ryan Dominguez. I am going to be leading this presentation today. I was on one of the grant panels last year. The topic of today's discussion is, first of all, giving you a really decent overview of the two grants at hand and talking to you a little bit about how to improve the narrative sections. There are two other workshops for the budget and the ADA plan, which we can also talk about a little bit today. As I'm going through, please feel free to drop your questions in the chat. We're going to try to get to all of them at the end of the presentation today. And, if anything pops up, you need to leave early, please also just communicate through the chat. We'll be sure to flag that. Okay, I think we're just going to hop in because I know that time is precious and valuable. I'm going to share my screen and we'll kind of go from there. So let's see. Okay. Excuse my slideshow. Okay. So this is the Mercer County Culture and Heritage FY 2026 Local Arts Program and History Re-Grant Program. That's what we're here to talk about today. With the intention of promoting the growth and public accessibility of high quality, diverse community arts and history organizations and projects. So I want to talk about the difference, first of all, between the two grants. I know that we have both history organizations and arts organizations on the call today, so I'm going to do my best to delineate between the two. The history grant, the Mercer County's Cultural and Heritage Commission offers grants through its annual History Re-Grant Program, a partnership between the New Jersey Historical Commission and the County of Mercer. These funds, offered in support of historic sites, organizations, and history programs throughout Mercer County, are made available through a Community History Partnership Grant from the New Jersey Historical Commission. That's a little bit different than what we're looking at for the local arts program, or what we call the LAP grants. These are New Jersey State Council on the Arts have made funds available for support of the arts through a local art partnership re-grant administered by the Mercer County Cultural and Heritage Division. The state block grant program provides essential support for the local arts community. The grants are intended to promote the growth and public accessibility of high quality, diverse community arts organizations and projects. So that's just an overview of where these two grants are coming from, which will be important to know as we go through the presentation today. Good thing for you to know. The application will open on June 16th, 2025. So mark your calendars for that. That is coming up quickly as the summer months come on. And the application deadline is on August 29th. The program, the activities that you want to focus on should take place between January 1st, 2026 and December 1st, 2026. So that's what you're looking at. I'm in an effort to keep this presentation light, I have added a few wonderful grant making cartoons. If you look up grant making cartoons on Google, it's always a good time. And this one says at the bottom, is it just me, or are these review panels getting a lot tougher? And I can say, as someone who was on one of the review panels for next year, I think the first thing to let you all know is that we are not out to get you. We are not searching for every little typo or detail. We really do want to award as many of the organizations as we can, and that we are cheering for you, which is one of the reasons I'm so excited to be doing this presentation for all of you today. We want to help you write the best grant possible for your organization. Okay, so like we said, this is the application process, 8 steps. I'm going to try to break it down pretty pretty succinctly for you. Like I said, the deadline, August 29th. So first thing you're going to want to do is check your eligibility. Make sure you're eligible to apply for both of these grants. Then you're going to review the grant priorities, decide on the category that you want to apply under, register and set up a portal account. If you haven't done that yet, we're going to send this PowerPoint out to you after this presentation. There is the link to do so. One of the biggest, I would say, pitfalls that I've experienced with younger organizations who've never applied to grants before is that they always begin gathering their support materials and ADA materials after they're done with the narrative and after they're done with the budget. It is highly, highly, highly recommended that you begin gathering your support materials and your ADA materials right away. They take a very long time to gather. We'll talk about what those are, but just put that at the forefront of what you need to be doing. You can start doing that now, even before the grant portal opens. So you have between now, think about you have between now and when that portal opens in June to gather all your support materials so that you can upload them right away. If at all possible, talk through the application with your fellow staff members. Make a list of the major aspects of the ask that will line up with the grant priorities. When I was working in development at the Wilma Theater in Philadelphia, when we were applying to grants, if I didn't know a ton about the project at hand, I would sit down with Blanca Ziska, who was the artistic director at the time, and I would say, just word vomit at me. Give me a half hour and word vomit at me about this project. Help me understand this project better. If you are not someone who is the leader of the project or the creator of the project who is trying to write the grant, it can be incredibly difficult to understand the nuance of it and to find the language for it, particularly if it's somebody else's vision. That is your job. So make sure that you can record it if you want. Make sure that you have a way to connect the project with the language you're trying to use. Also, creating the budget to support those priorities. And writing a narrative that focuses on these priorities. Oftentimes I find when I'm looking at these grants that the narrative doesn't match up with the budget and the budget doesn't match up with the narrative. And then neither of those match up with the support materials. So if there is someone different writing the budget than is writing the narrative, you two need to be in communication so that you make sure that whatever is reflected in that narrative can also be double checked on the budget side. Some of the grants that came through last year, we were finding people would write about something in their narrative and it would be missing from their budget or vice versa. Those two things, we are looking for those two things to match up. So make sure that I would recommend the person who writes the budget reads the narrative and the person who writes the narrative looks over the budget. I know that sounds like, yeah, no kidding, but we often find that those are completely disjointed and it brings up a lot of questions when we're reviewing the grants. Eligibility requirements. So this is the first thing you want to double check because you don't want to go and write a whole grant and then find out you were eligible to begin with. You do need to be Mercer County based. That's important. A certified as a 501c3 or 501c4 agency, nonprofit organizations, libraries, institutes of higher education. Please note that first-time applicants are required to include a copy of their organization's IRS letter of determination with their grant application. Sometimes those are hard to find. You have to dig them up. Please make sure that that's one of the first things you do if you're a first-time applicant. Also, units of local government, K through 12 schools and school districts are not eligible to apply independently. I believe this is new, but they can partner or collaborate with an eligible applicant group, which is 501c3 on a project. So that's new. The organization has to have been in operation, providing arts or history programming or services for at least 2 years prior to applying. And applicants cannot receive funds from both the Mercer County Cultural and Heritage Commission and the New Jersey State Council on the Arts or the New Jersey Historical Commission during the same funding year, nor may they receive funding from a culture and heritage office in another county during the same funding year. So that is something to check in with your development director or the other people in your organization about. If you're not sure, make sure that you hit all of these eligibility requirements. Other notes about that, if you are an educational group, Again, we say you can apply for special project support grants only. You have to demonstrate an ability to provide programs, services, or activities to the general public, and you must describe in detail how the proposed special project relates to the overall mandate of your program. So that is something specific if you are an educational group that you're going to want to flag that. Also, if you are a religious or religion affiliated group, this is, I'm not sure if this was on last year's application, but the New Jersey Historical Commission requires that all re-grant requests submitted by religious organizations or institutions be sent for review through the commission by the state attorney to determine if it falls under the definition of religious use. This should not deter qualifying religious institutions from applying, but may prolong the award process if funding is deemed allowable. So please just take note of that for your budgets. If you're depending on this money coming in at a certain time, know that it may be delayed. Okay. So you figure out, you're like, great, this is awesome. We are eligible, wonderful. Now we have to figure out which category we're applying to. So if you're eligible, you can either apply in either arts or history for special project support or general operating support. Different grant matches are required based on the type of grant being requested. So we'll go over that in a little bit. You are going to need to match this grant in the rest of your budget in some way, shape, or form. Organizations can only apply for one LAP grant, one arts grant, regardless of category in any given year. And this is new this year, so please flag this for yourself and your organization. All awards, whether they be special project support or gen op support, are getting capped this year at $7,000. That is new this year due to budget cuts and number of applicants and a lot of other things. So please notate that in your budget and in your application. No matter how much you apply for, if you apply for $15,000, you could write the best grant on the face of the planet. Everyone is getting capped at $7,000 this year. Okay, it's a little bit about if you apply for gen op support. And again, this is a big overview right now. So I'm kind of speeding through a lot of this. And obviously everybody's gonna have situations that pop up, but this is kind of the general overview. General operating support grants are available only to those whose missions are exclusively devoted to the public presentation of and/or education in the arts or history. So that's something to keep in mind. What is the mission of your organization, and does it fall into one of those two categories? That's for gen op only. The maximum amount of grant funds for any organization may request is $30,000, I'm sorry, 30% of the average of last year and the current year total operating income. Again, not to exceed that $7,000. Gen op support requires a one-to-one cash match, and you cannot use an in-kind donation for that match. None of the monies used for matching in this grant can come from funds from any division, department, or any other part of the state of New Jersey. That's really, really important. GOS grants provide funding for the basic operating costs of an organization based in Mercer County. Applicants should describe the full range of their organization's operations. We can talk about how to do that in a second. And their grant must demonstrate high standards of programming and management. That's why we need all these materials from you. Annual budget expenditures can include, but are not necessarily limited to, the following. So you can read those on your own. We have staff salaries, we have professional development, materials to enable compliance with the ADA. We'll talk about that in a bit. Marketing, publicity, lease and mortgage expenses. All of these can fall under your gen op support. I always find these grants to be incredibly valuable to organizations. They're actually kind of difficult to get as GOS grants. So if you need them, if any of these things fall under categories your organization needs, please feel free to apply. A bit about special project grants. They're available to all Mercer County-based nonprofits. Okay, so you don't have to necessarily be a history or an arts organization to apply to these. Um, I will say, and this is an important thing to note, that if you are applying for a special projects history grant, the history projects are required to work with a historian in some capacity. So if your project, let's say you have a special project and you're doing Hamilton, for example, does that fall under the arts? Does that fall under history? So first thing to ask yourself is there a historian working on it? Fun fact, there was a historian who worked extensively on the musical Hamilton. That could have fallen into either category, but you want to flag that. The arts special projects grants do require a one-to-one match. However, and this is the big difference, 50% of that match can be in the form of in-kind donations. So that's used. These are goods or services that would have otherwise been purchased by the organization. A lot of organizations work with their space is given in kind. They don't actually pay for the space. What is that worth? And so that can go into that match that's required. The maximum allowable request would be 50% or less of the estimated expense budget for that specific project, right? That's something to keep in mind. Think about that $7,000 cap. All events funded through these grants must take place within Mercer County and be open to the general public. That is huge, right? So when we were looking through the grant applications last year, there were definitely special projects that we found were not going to be open to the general public. That is a requirement of this grant. They may not be used for general administrative salaries. That's something else to keep in mind. And examples of eligible activities are listed below, or actually are listed below. If you don't see an example of what you're trying to do, contact the arts or history program coordinator to discuss your project before completing the application to determine if you're eligible. I have talked to Chelsea a lot. The staff is here to help you. So please let us know if you have any questions, whether or not you're going to be eligible before going through the whole grant process. And eligible SP projects could include, this is for example, a concert, an exhibition, online painting demonstration, mixed media, lots of special run of theatrical production. You will get extended guidelines, and in those guidelines, there's a list of the specific things that are not eligible. So again, just make sure that what you're doing is within these guidelines before you jump into the application. Okay, so we're going to talk a lot about narrative today. Like I said, there is also separate workshops on your budget documentation and your ADA plan. I highly, 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 highly suggest, if you are not registered for these two other workshops, that you jump on and register. The people who are running them are phenomenal. The budget documentation one is coming up. Was it yesterday? What's the date? No, it is coming up next Monday, May 19th, with a virtual on May 21st. And the ADA plan, which is going to be phenomenal, is on June 16th, with a virtual on June 30th. So if you have any questions about how to RSVP for those, please, again, pop your question in the chat. We'll make sure that you are registered. All three of these things need to be in coordination for you to have a successful grant. Okay. So I told you at the beginning that one of the most important things for you to start gathering would be your support materials. These are things you can start gathering now. Here are some things to keep in mind. You see my little cartoon of the board reviewer versus the engaged reviewer. Like I said, last year, I was one of these reviewers. I always find that the support materials are there to make your narrative come to life, right? Narrative is great. It's a lot of words, right? You're like, man, I can't really figure out how to explain all of this in this limited capacity, right? Limited character count. And there's so much more I want to show you about my organization. That is what your support materials are for, right? So don't choose them haphazardly. Choose them with some strategy. What were you not able to tell us in that narrative that you want to show us in the support materials? What do you want to enhance our knowledge of with those support materials? The material should demonstrate the organization's success and presenting programs similar to the project described in their grant proposal, right? Let's say you're doing a theatrical production. Great, show us how you've had success doing that in the past. Even if you're like, but this is a brand new idea, we've never done it before. You have done some type of programming with some type of audience. Show us how that's been successful in the past years of your organization. This is a big one. A lot of people were missing this last year. All applicants must submit a long-range plan for the operation or the program, or an outline showing the process for developing a new long-range plan. So see the guidelines, the more specific guidelines that you'll get for what must be included in this plan or outline. This was a support material a lot of people just didn't turn in last year. I'm a huge fan of long-range planning, strategic planning. If you're trying to develop, let's say you're trying to develop a festival. All right, how do you see that festival expanding over the next few years? So please sit down with the people in your organization, check out what those guidelines are, and make sure that is one of your support materials. The materials have to display programming and administrative capacity. And this one, I'm going to tell you, I have worked for large organizations, I have worked for small organizations. Getting the resumes of key staff and board members, as well as the artists and experts working on that specific program, takes a very long time. It is summer. People are, getting ready to turn their brains off. Now is a good time to reach out to anybody who's needed, that lead artist in the show, that lead violinist, the managing director of your organization, and make sure that you say, hey, do you have an updated resume? And to make sure that you have those on file. If you have an organization where you have a development director, they might just have that stuff lying around. I would recommend having this is the folder of stuff I always have to use to apply to grants. Just hang it out on your desktop and make sure at the beginning of every fiscal year, you're getting those things updated. This grant has a lot. The good news about this grant is that all of the materials that are required are going to be required for several other grants that you're going to have throughout your fiscal year. So make sure that this is kind of stuff that you just keep handy on your computer. So the resumes of key staff and artists is going to be a big thing for you to gather. This is another big thing. So your support material should be no more than 2 years old, right? So if you give us a pamphlet or a poster from something that happened 5 years ago, it's not going to help us, right? So within the past 2 years, if you're attaching older materials, you have to add an addendum to explain, why do you consider these materials especially representative of your organization and important to this application? You're going to say, well, we haven't done a program like this in 2 years. We've done a program like this 3 years ago. Okay, well, that's okay. Just provide that explanation for us. Two big things to note. Make sure that your support materials represent the high quality of what you do. I can't tell you the amount of support materials we got last year with typos on them, like big blatant typos in their marketing materials. It's kind of a thing. So please make sure that you're giving us a representation of who your organization is. And also note, so that you're not scrambling last minute, that in order to upload these materials, the support materials have to be in a PDF file, and the file size must not exceed 7, I guess that's megabytes, MIBS. And that's important because a lot of you can't, that means you can't turn things in as a JPEG. That means you might need the extra time to convert them into a PDF file. So that's something for you to keep in mind. This is big. This is how we are grading the grants, right? So if you're saying, I don't know what they're looking for, this is what the grant panel is looking for. Administrative abilities and financial stability. How has your organization been functioning over the past few years? Is it in financial danger? Are they going through financial hardship? What is the ability of your administrative staff to actually carry out this program, not only for this project, but in the next year or two of your organization? Is the budget reasonable? Are the use of funds and ability to raise funds for a special project reasonable, right? Can you really do that with the money that you're asking for? The planning and development, including the long range planning strategies, are you able to really plan for the growth or the sustainability of your organization and your program? This is a big one, the cultural diversity of the organization and the audience. You're going to hear me say this about 7 times during this. If you do not have numbers about the diversity of your program and your organization, please, please, please find a way to do a type of survey to gather that information. It is critical for an organization to have numbers to back up who they're claiming their audience is. So some type of survey that you can give them at the beginning or end of a performance, or you can mail out to people, where are you coming from? What is your zip code? What is your cultural background? These are things you might not get everybody to respond, but you'll get some people to respond. So I think claiming that you are a diverse organization, that's great. A lot of people think that they are. Numbers to back that up will go a really, really long way. And we can give you some advice if anybody is interested in some strategies for how to gather that information. But it is critical for you to think of a way to do that, not only for this grant, but grants you apply to in the future. The geographical outreach of your organization needs to reach all regions of Mercer County. We're making sure if I'm reading it and I'm like, okay, that's great, but really they're only hitting one region. Are they really serving all of Mercer County? That's something you really have to think about. The need, promise, and potential of the organization or project, and the capability of the group to follow through. You could have a wonderful idea and not know how to follow through with that. So we're looking for that. Demonstrated ability to achieve artistic excellence, fulfill the mission, and meet the needs of the community through quality program and offerings. And this is a big one, evidence of ADA compliance or a clear and concise plan to address any non-compliance issues. That is something we are putting into a high priority this year. Speaking of priorities, Isaac Newton struggles to write the economic impact section of his gravity proposal. This one's rough. So there's always a danger of, do you write the grant for the project, or do you try to make the project fit the grant? That's never a good idea, right? We want you to have exciting new ideas, that you are highlighting the aspects of those exciting new ideas that happen to fit within this grant. So we hope the project comes first and then we find the way to fund it. But sometimes you're like, how do I pull these priorities out? So let's talk about how to do that. Okay, so let's look at the priorities first that we're looking at. Arts grants. We are looking for innovation in programming or projects. What is new? What is exciting? What are you doing that hasn't necessarily been done before, either with your organization or in general? Collaborations or partnerships between culturally diverse organizations and artists, demonstration of benefits to culturally diverse or underserved populations, the inclusion of and service to artists who are disabled, demonstrated efforts to expand outreach efforts and programming to attract new audiences. This is really big. So the idea of if we build it, they will come is not necessarily enough anymore, right? So just inviting people to the space doesn't necessarily, as we all know, equal bigger numbers. How are you actively going yourselves into those other communities and advertising? How are you stepping outside of your comfort zone as an organization to make sure that not only you're doing that outreach, and how are you changing your programming to welcome those people in a different way, right? History grants, broadening, deepening, and diversifying the audience for New Jersey history, strengthening existing history organizations and programs, initiating new programming on New Jersey history, increasing accessibility to and awareness of historical resources to diverse communities, increasing the body and quality of information on state history available to the public, and preserving materials, ephemera, artifacts, sites, etc., for the ongoing study of New Jersey history. These are the priorities that we're going to be looking at. Does your program, does your organization fit these priorities? If so, great, we want to hear about it. Okay, this is the kind of the meat and potatoes section, right? Let's talk about the narrative, right? And you'll see in my little lovely cartoon, I know I asked for a one-page plan, but could you give me a little more detail? Isn't this how we all feel when writing a grant for a project or our organization? You're like, I only have a certain amount of characters. How do I get the haha most bang for my buck? Here are the things we have to understand in order for us to even think, okay, this grant was well written, this person knows what they're doing. We need to know who you serve. Again, I say, survey your audience. Back those claims up with actual numbers, right? In any way you can. You have time now before the grant portal opens to make a strategy for how to do that. You might not have the numbers this year. That's fine. Tell us what you're thinking those numbers will. What would be great is if you're like, this is who we think our audience is. We have a plan to get a survey out, and then we find out in your final report the audience who you actually gathered, right? You should be surveying your audience every single chance you get so that Hi, sorry about that. The electricity for Olive Rider University just went out. So is everybody back? I don't know if that went off anybody else. Chelsea, can you hear me?
We're all here, I think.
Okay, I am sorry about that. That was crazy. I guess I'll just pick off up where I left off. Let me see here. Again, my sincere apologies. That was crazy. Let's see if I can get us started again. Okay, hopefully everybody can see that. Chelsea, am I good?
I think you're all good.
Okay, thanks. Sorry about that. So anyway, when last I left you, we were talking about surveying your audience. The other thing we're looking for in the narrative is your artistic vision, which is your mission statement versus your vision statement. We'll talk about the difference between those in a second. The organizational structure, how it's managed, who is making the decisions about the programming, or just making the decisions for the organization in general, was the representation of your board. Another thing you might want to notate is, speaking of diversity, what is the diversity of your board and how are you working to diversify your board is also a great thing for us to know. Qualifications of persons in leadership roles. This is where we're talking about those support documents. Where are those resumes and things that we ask for? Brief, succinct examples of recent work, current accomplishments or challenges. I learn a lot about an organization by understanding the way they come up against challenges. To say that you don't have any challenges is probably not true. I'm more interested in finding out, well, how do you navigate those? How does that work? Do you, buckle when a challenge happens, or do you have a system in place for how to attack those head on? And like we had talked about earlier, long range or strategic plans, and that should be in your support documents. Let me go to the next one now. There we go. Right, so let's talk about that mission statement versus your vision statement. For some reason I have lost all of you, so give me a quick second. Okay, here we go. Let's talk about that mission statement versus that support statement. Your mission statement, and this is just, oops. And this is just defines an organization's purpose, outlining what it does and its approach to achieving its goals, focusing on the present. A vision statement describes the organization's desired future state, outlining what it aspires to become or achieve in the long term, focusing on the future. It is good for every organization to have both of these types of statements ready. It is a clear and succinct way to tell us not only what your organization does, but where your organization is going.
Ryan,
Yeah,
don't mean to cut you off. Your screen stopped sharing, so just want to let you know.
of course it did.
It's just the day for it, you know?
It
The
is the
rain,
day.
heck, it's all good.
It's okay. Hold on. Can you all see that now?
Yes.
Great. Apologies.
No good.
Can you all see that still? Chelsea?
Yes, you're all
Okay.
good.
Okay. Great. I'm having one of those great days like that. I'm blaming the rain. I'm just going to blame the rain. Okay, so those are the two, mission statement versus vision statement, right? Those are the definitions of the two. Here's some examples. Okay, Disney, we all know Disney. We're all familiar with that product. Disney's mission statement, right? And this might sound like a lot of your mission statements: to entertain, to inform, and to inspire people around the globe through the power of unparalleled storytelling, reflecting the iconic brands, creative minds, and innovative technologies that make ours the world premier entertainment company, right? What is their vision statement? Well, what they want to be is to be one of the world's leading producers and providers of entertainment and information. Those are two different things, right? One is what they're doing, and what is what they aspire to do. You need to know both of those things for our organization. If you do not have a vision statement, talk to your artistic director, talk to your executive director, and ask them to help you come up with one, right? Because you're going to want to include both of those things in this grant. Okay. Other things that your narrative should include. We talked about a mission statement, a brief history of the organization, the arts component of non-arts-based organization, or the activities and goals relevant to the special project. I want to talk a little bit about the history of the organization. This should be a paragraph, right? Some of your organizations have been around for 30 years. How do you pull that all together, right? We'll talk about it in a little bit, but you want to find the words that are going to get you the most bang for your buck. What do you want people to know about the history of your organization? What are the most important aspects of it, right? You want a clear, detailed explanation of how the grant will be used. Please, if you can, $2,000 of the grant are going to go to this. $250 of the grant are going to go to this. This should be incredibly specific. One of the things that we came up against is we were like, we think this is a great organization. We have no idea how they're going to use this money. That was a big question that we had last year on the panel. So I have a big star next to this one, because we're going to talk about it a little bit more, but this one was a big question mark that we had going into last year's panel. Describe in detail the project or programs to be funded. Notice I said in detail, right? How will they be carried out? Specify the art forms involved, include a schedule of the calendar, right, would be helpful. An explanation of how the project will improve the organization's outreach efforts, how the project will be evaluated. This also goes for Gen Op, right? Tell us how you're going to use the money. Tell us what you're going to be doing, right? Explain the ADA policy, right? We'll talk about that more on the next slide. List and explain partnerships or collaborations with other groups. Discuss, this was another one that was missing from a lot of grants last year. What's your publicity plan, right? So I'm glad that you do a lot of programming. What's your plan for telling people about it? This goes back to, is it really open to the general public? If you have no way of advertising to them, or no way to outreach, to invite them to the efforts that your organization is doing. Be as concise as possible. Includes methods employed such as cable network, community shows, newspapers, whatever. Whatever you're doing, we need to know that your programming is actually out there and accessible for people. All right, a little note about the ADA policy. This should describe the progress made in making programming more accessible and inclusive. It should discuss the barriers that still exist. And it should outline the goals and specific steps to address and remove the barriers. We're talking about a detailed timeline, assignment of responsibility. This is huge, consideration of costs. If you are applying for a Gen Op grant, some of these costs could be what you're applying for. Let us know that, right? This is what I'm talking about. Yes, the portal opens in June. You have time to get all your ducks in a row regarding all of this stuff, right? Please know going in, and these are just some basic bookkeeping things, each narrative question has a different character limit. This is how much you're going to have for each of those. It's not a lot, right? It looks like a lot. It's not going to feel like a lot when you write it, right? So your mission statement and brief history, 5,500 characters. Your staff, your board structure, 4,000. How are you going to use the grant? That should say lab or gen op, right? Or history. 10,000 and additional info, 8,000. You don't have a lot of characters, right? So you want to be as succinct as possible. Other things to consider. I can't say this strongly enough. Please check your spelling and grammar. There were so many grants that just did not have spelling and grammar, and I was like, who wrote this last year? Include any data or survey results that you have. Write what you want. This is always my advice. Word vomit. Write what you want to say. Write exactly what you think that project is, exactly who your organization is. And then go back and evaluate what words aren't completely essential. Make your argument as succinct as possible. I like people to argue as if they are a lawyer. Prove to me why this grant is essential for your organization to do this thing, and why your organization or this program is essential for Mercer County, right? That's what you're trying to prove through using those priorities, using those grant materials. Please, please, please do not answer the same question with the same information twice. This should not be a copy and paste job, right? If you have narrative, if you have language from another grant, don't just copy and paste it in. Copy and paste it in and then making sure that it answers the question at hand. Do not use the same language in two questions. We've asked two different questions for a reason. We prefer to have two different answers. So think about how you can expand upon it. Think about what else you can say, right? But please don't copy and paste the same answer twice. That's not what we're looking for. Answer the question at hand, be specific. Again, if you don't know the project very well, take the time to sit down and interview people that do. Take the time to sit down and interview those artists. This is a great time to get quotes, right? I'm a big fan of quotes. I'm a big fan of proof, right? And these types of things. This should be we don't have to take your word for it. You have quotes from other people. You have those survey results. You have those numbers, right? The testimonials that you could gather. Use the other people that are involved with your organization to gather some of this material. And then also, and this is, you're going to laugh when I say this, is try to have fun. It does not have to be a big labor, intensive thing. Really, if you're the person writing the grant, you should be one of the most excited people about either the organization or the project that you're doing. We want to know how well you know the project, and we would love to hear you prove why this is the best thing ever for Mercer County. And, if you give us that passion and you give us that specificity, we're going to believe you, because that's how it works. Okay, so all of that said, I just gave a lot of information in a semi-short amount of time. This is kind of like your checklist. So you want to make sure that you have the IRS determination letter for the new applicants, either the ADA checklist or the ADA plan. So if you're a new grantee and you've never applied before, you have to have an ADA plan. If you have applied before, you can use the ADA checklist. That's going to be able to be downloaded and filled out. So check the portal for that. You're going to want your list, your board of trustees, your budget, your long-range plan, those resumes of key staff, board members, and artists, additional support materials to prove you can do this. Again, links to digital content, brochures, flyers, posters, and you're going to want to make sure all those narrative questions are filled out, spell checked, and ready to go. This is a kind of a sidebar note. When you get the grant, because I know that you all will, you have to make sure that credit is given in all of your printed materials, web materials, releases, and announcements regarding all activities to which those funds are contributed. So that's part of the reason why we want to know what exactly these funds are paying for, because it's important for us to be able to go back and be like, oh, we helped pay for that. Grantees must use the exact statements below, corresponding to which they receive. So grantees are not permitted to use the county or council logos without proper credit statement attached. So these, once you get the grant, these are going to be your best friend. You have to make sure that if this grant is paying for those materials or that program or whatever, that this information is on there. That's really, really important to the commission, and really important that you can prove that. That might be, if you got the grant last year, that'd be a great thing to put in your marketing materials for this year, right? So things to think ahead about. Okay, So I am coming to the end of my time. Now is the time to answer questions. I am going to stop sharing my screen. This has been an interesting adventure today, to see if we have any questions from anybody, but it doesn't look like we have a ton. Chelsea? Let's see.
Hello.
Okay.
Yes. So, oh, give me 1 second. I'm gonna mute. We have this on twice. I don't want to hear the feedback. I'm muting that Mary's here with us in our division. I know the Washington Crossing Park Association asked 2 questions. And if all right, I can step in and help answer.
Oh, yeah, go
Um,
for it.
One question was about the New Jersey Cultural Trust and whether or not you can receive a New Jersey Cultural Trust grant at the same time as applying for our grant. And yes, you can. And the reason being is that the purpose or the reason that organizations are not allowed to apply for the New Jersey Historical Commission and the New Jersey State Council on the Arts the same time as this grant is because the state views that as essentially double dipping. So if you're receiving a grant directly from the New Jersey Historical Commission, and then you apply for our history grant, which is money we receive from the Historical Commission, you're receiving money from that commission twice, and they don't allow that. But the cultural trust is a completely separate pot, completely separate type of application. So yes, organizations are allowed to receive cultural trust funding and apply for the historical and arts grant. The second question, I think also was Washington Crossing Park, was about an annual budget cap. And is as far as the historical, the New Jersey History Grant is concerned, Mercer County organizations with an annual operating budget of at least 100,000, who can document that 25% or more of their virtual or actual audience comes from beyond a 20-mile radius from their headquarters can apply directly to the New Jersey Historical Commission. And if you have a question about that, you can reach out to the division and we can kind of figure out exactly if you are eligible to apply directly to the New Jersey Historical Commission. I believe there is a similar guide about annual budgets for the New Jersey State Council on the Arts. That's something I want to double check with the state about. But if you do have any concerns as to whether or not you should be applying to this grant or to the state grants, reach out to us, let us know, and we can figure out exactly where would be best for you to apply or to qualify. So those are those 2 questions. I didn't see any others.
Oh, here's a new one.
The new ones?
Oh, good. They said, thanks, this is helpful. Any questions about the writing of the narrative, what you should include? Any tips as far as that goes? Application materials, what you should be gathering, what you should be focused on. Wow, okay. I didn't think it was that comprehensive, but okay.
You were clear.
Apparently. Right? I have a lot of questions about ADA, but I think that's covered later. Yes, ADA is going to be covered in a different workshop. I can say, oh, thank you. Someone has to step out for another meeting. Okay, so questions are starting to come in. So as far as the ADA, I do want to, John McEwen is an expert at this, who's going to be one of the people who's running the ADA workshop. But I will say that saying what the plan is and saying, even if you're not there yet with ADA, saying how you want to be there, how you plan to be there, what the timeline is, will go a really, really long way. Saying, we're just not able to do that. There's some ways that we understand, but there's some things like there's much further that you can go than you think. And so I think coming up with creative solutions is what we're looking for. But John McEwen can talk to you way more about that.
Ryan, I will say too, just to let everyone know, we are updating the ADA portion of the application within the Founded portal, because I know there were a lot of different questions about that last year between the checklist and the plan. So we're gonna simplify that for someone to be able to either upload the checklist or upload the plan, similar to how if you've applied last year, how you would have submitted your finance form or your in-kind form. It'll be downloadable, you can fill it out and attach it. So that's gonna be updated for this upcoming year. We're sorting out the kinks, I guess you could say.
David has a question about budget. Should we include other fundraising efforts and their results? They should be included in your budget, like what other ways you're funding the organization or the project. So yes, all of that, the way that it kind of depends, like, do you have what you expect to raise, or have you already raised those funds through that? And if they go toward that project, then yes, they should be included, or your organization in general. That's going to be part of your budget and part of that potential match, right? So yes, that's really important for us to know. Any other questions? Any questions about the support materials? Wow, I was expecting way more questions than this. All right then. And then Chelsea, the guidelines are going to go out. They're already available, I assume.
Yes, I emailed everyone who was attending or registered to attend the session, the guidelines. I did publish them on our website, but you might not see them yet. They have to go through a couple layers of approval before it's published to the public. But when they are available, I can send out a link just to remind everyone, hey, these are up to date. And by June 16th, you should be able to log into your portal and see that there's additional options to apply for fiscal year 2026 funding.
And I also just want to say, I know I really, really harped on survey results and telling us how you're using the grant funding. I can send you all out an example if you think it would be helpful of, some example of narrative of what we're looking for, like how are we going to use this funding and how specific you could or should be. I can come up with some examples of that and send it to you all if you think it would be helpful. If there's anything else, like you get to the point where you're like, I'm just really not sure what they're looking for with this question, please feel free to reach out so that we can help guide you toward a more specific answer. What we don't want is for people to feel lost or at sea. This should be relatively non-painful for you. And if you feel that you just don't know what we're asking, then reach out to us. That also help us clarify the question for next year, quite frankly, because if you don't know what we're asking, that's a problem on our end. So please let us know, I don't know what you're looking for in this question. I don't know how to even begin to gather this information. Anything else? Okay. So Chelsea, I don't know if you want to make my information available or if they can reach out to you. I'd be happy to answer questions in the future, like in any way. I'm really, really grateful that you all took the time to be here. As you can tell, I'm really ecstatic about grant writing and about this organization and this grant in general. I think it's a really, really great opportunity for those in Mercer County to kind of show the best of the history and the arts and what we do. So I'm enthusiastic about this grant in general. If anything pops up, I am here to help in any way I can.
Thank you so much.
Great. Thank
And
you
thank you all
all
for coming too.
All right. Take care, everyone.
All right. Have a good
Bye.
day, everyone.